Good evening. I'm Scott Binsack. Welcome to Sunday Night with me. Tonight, I'm going to be discussing regret. Something I believe we all live with or have lived with every day, but I believe we all still live with it. In every decision we make every day. Regret is the result of blame and guilt on oneself. Woulda, coulda, shoulda, woulda changed the result, coulda changed the result. And regret, to me, is like cancer. It will affect you every day of your life if you allow it to. Those decisions or the things that you should have said to a loved one maybe before they passed, or in an argument in an old relationship, or you could have done better in that relationship, or in a business decision, I should have not invested in that, or I should have invested in this. I should have not got that new office. I should have kept my office at home. Regret will eat you every day, believing in your mind that you could have had a different decision, a different outcome from that decision. When in reality, regret is a manifestation of guilt and blame. When you feel guilty for something you've done or not done, or you blame yourself, this is where you get your regret. I've come to learn that regret can be handled, can be dealt with, and can be turned into something positive. Because if you think about it, if to where you are in life now was the result of decisions you've made along the way to get here. And I know that some guilt can eat you alive. For years, I've had several things daily eat me alive when it comes to regret. One I've discussed several times in my shows before, my childhood, which I felt guilty about for being abused when in fact I shouldn't have been felt guilty. And then in life, with my past marriage, relationships, business decisions. One regret I carried for a long time was that my mom died at 52 years old. She was an alcoholic, and 8 years before she died, she got sober. And I got to know my real mom. We became to be best friends. And I had my relationship with my mom was difficult. I'm an only child, and growing up with an alcoholic, and I had a couple alcoholics in my family to top it off. It's difficult. You say black, they say blue. There's no winning there. There's no winning. And their addiction is tough, very tough to deal with. I think anybody's addiction, whether it be a drug addiction, alcohol addiction. And you have to learn that you're not the problem, but that they have the problem. But one of the things I regretted is I got close to my mom over 8 years. And as I discussed in my last show, I had a near-fatal auto accident in 1999. My mother was told that night I had a half an hour to live. State police showed up at her house. And 6 months after that, my mother was found dead at 52 from a massive heart attack. And my grandparents found her, her own parents, found their only daughter dead at her home. And I happened to be in New Jersey on business at that time. And I can remember 24 hours before, there was a long message from my mom on my answering machine. On my, well, don't use, it didn't have an answering machine, but my answering service. And I could tell my mom had been drinking for the first time in 8 years. And it was crushing. And I knew, I had already known it was going to happen. And she started dating an ex-cop from New York. My father was a cop as well. And I had told this man a few months before, I said, you know, and he was a drinker. And I had told him, I said, and I told him seriously, if anything happens to my mother and she starts drinking again, because she cannot drink because of her health. My mom had serious medical conditions, lupus being one of them. And she was on lots of medication. And she had a rare heart condition. I told him, I said, she cannot drink. Please do not drink around her. Please do not have respect for her. If you really care about her, have some respect for her. Well, and I made it clear to him. I don't care if he was a cop or not. Well, that respect was not held by this man. And no, is my mother to blame for taking the drink? Of course. We're all to blame for our actions. However, he flaunted it in front of her and continued to flaunt it in front of her and even bring alcohol to her home. And the doctors told my mother, if you drink, you suffer the severe consequences of dying. And that long message was there, and I could tell she was extremely upset. And it went on. The message was actually over 30 minutes. And that's how I knew. And I said to myself, you know what? All right, I'll call her tomorrow. This was late at night when I got the message. I'll call her tomorrow after she's, you know, slept, and hopefully she will stop drinking. I never got that chance to talk to my mother or say goodbye to my mother. And it ate me up for a long, long time. God, it ate me up. Next thing I know, I was burying my mother. And I was the administrator to her will, trustee, etc. And one of the hardest things you have to do is bury your mother. Very difficult. Very difficult. And I blamed this cop for a long time, this man. And I was much younger at the time. Had to blame somebody, and that's a lot what we do. We always try to put things on others for why we're feeling our regret. When in fact, I should have called my mother right then and there when I got the message. Now, would that have changed the outcome of her dying? Probably not. Because afterwards, I found out there was probably nothing going to stop my mother from passing away that day. And that's my point. I had to forgive myself for the guilt that I carried around and the blame for, I figured if I said something, maybe if I got one of her sponsors over to the house or did something else, she'd still be here. But no, that's not the case. Why? Because death will come when it's meant to come. And usually there's nothing, not usually, I mean, a doctor can save somebody, but believe it or not, if that person was supposed to die at that time, and thus the doctor was not present or couldn't save them, they're going to die. Once I learned to forgive myself and looked at why I was regretting this, I was mad at myself. God, was I mad at myself. And I've been mad at myself for a lot of things in my life. And as we go along, I'm going to be sharing them, as you know. But I'm not anymore. Not mad. Regret is deep. Blame, shame, guilt. One of the other regrets I had in life was a business one. As I've discussed in other shows, I quit school at 15, opened my own company, construction company on Long Island at 18. I was really 17 when I opened it, but 18, got licensed, insured. This company was my life. This company, I put every bit of my heart and soul in, and I started that company because I love to do what I do, build homes. And I can remember driving down the ocean front roads in the Hamptons on Long Island or other places on Long Island and looking at those mansions and being like, I'm going to build one of those. Not for myself. I didn't want one for myself. I wanted to build it for somebody else to walk away and say, I built that. And that's when life was simple. Meaning, my goal wasn't to build a mansion for myself or to stuff my pockets with money. It was to build that home, build one of those homes, an achievement, a goal. And it was because I love what I had to do, love what I do, and because I needed to survive. And that was the only way I knew how to survive. That was the gift I was given, to build, create, read blueprints. And I put everything into that business. And it was a success, major success. And years later, going through a divorce and some other serious matters, I had to make a big decision. Sell part of it and dissolve the other part of it and let it go. My heart and soul, company was doing over $12 million a year at that time in 1997. And we were only doing a few jobs a year. And I had made it. Sweat, tears, blood. And in doing that with that business, I moved. I put it behind. At the time, I ran, basically. I ran from what was happening with my divorce, some other very serious issues with some associates. And everything I worked for, I let go. And at the time, it was because I was in my 20s. At the time, it was because I had never faced what happened to me as a child, and the guilt, and the shame, and the blame. I used business and success and that drive to cover up my past, my childhood. I took that anger and put it into something positive, and that hurt into something positive. But when it all came down to it, that little boy that suffered was still underneath the surface. And when something happened to trigger that, it brought it right back. And I regretted that decision. God, up until only a few years ago that I learned that I had to forgive myself, and it wouldn't have changed anything really. Because I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't make that decision and then start a new chapter, a new path in my life. That regret is like cancer. It consumed me daily when I suffered some other things or when I was successful with something else. And yeah, I built another multi-million-dollar company years later. And I worked very hard at that one too. And you always look back and say, well, I could have done that better. I should have done this. Or if I didn't. No. You made the decisions at the time you made for the reasons that you made them. For whatever the circumstances were at that time. You can't regret the decision after the fact. Because if you do, it's like, well, you got to look at it as it's a lesson. It's a lesson. Don't regret it. Don't regret it. Even if the outcome was bad. Because in reality, you learned. You came away with something better. You may not think so at the time, but you have. We all create our own destinies. And I will say that because I know it to be true. We all create what we think we are. So if you think, or you're thus guilt or blame for decisions in your life, they will consume you, and regret will consume you. Don't regret it. All the decisions you make every day, and to worry about one or two or three, or whatever, one is crazy. It's crazy. We make so many decisions. Our brain makes so many decisions every second. It's a miracle. It's amazing. And I heard somebody recently say that they had a regret of not buying to their parents before they passed away, or just say something to them like, I love you. I agree with that. As I want to tell somebody you love them, and then they're gone, and you never got that chance, or you wanted to say you're sorry, and you never get the chance to say you're sorry. I'm sorry, are two very big, powerful words for oneself as well as to somebody else. Words are very powerful. Words can make you or break you. But in reality, you have to forgive yourself. You have to search deep and figure out why, what your regrets are, and forgive yourself and not feel guilty about them. Because you can't change it now. You can only move forward. You can't go back. You can never go back. But what you can do is move forward. You have to move forward every day, every second. You have to get up. You have to get dressed and move on and go on with your day and thus your life. And if you spend that day in the past in your mind, you're not really living that day for what it really is, a new beginning. Because every day is a new beginning. So some steps you can take to deal with regret and thus the shame and guilt is to, like I said, search deep within yourself and forgive yourself as well as forgive others. You see how all these things are tied together? They're all tied together. These emotions and feelings and the consequences therefrom. You can't go back. Now, if you look at a regret to see how you can change and make a better decision in the future, if you're ever in that situation again or other, then that's what you do. But don't beat yourself up every day. Because woulda, coulda, shoulda doesn't cut it. I can, I will, I want. Forget I want. I can and I will get her done. Those are the words you should fill your mind with every day. I can do this. I can be better at this. I can see it. If you can see it and you can believe it, you can do it. Trust what I tell you. I have been in some very, very serious situations in my life to where I could have laid down and died or let others walk all over me, or get up and fight. Get up and live. I chose to live. I chose to live. You need to choose to live without regret. Other things I've regretted in life is I could have fought hard. I could have made a different decision, or I could have said something in a situation that would have made it better. Not the case. I do know that if I was in those situations again, I will make a better decision now. Thus, I don't look back on the regret anymore. I've forgiven myself and others. Don't you see, it's all about you. It's all about how you see things, how you look at things. And a lot of times, if you just change your perspective even a little bit, you'll see a whole different world without regrets, without shame, without guilt. You can't change the past, but you can build your future. Regret is tough. It's a tough one. But I know it can be done because I've done it. You won't forget in your mind with it harboring you every day that you shoulda, coulda, woulda. That's a way of, I believe it's a cop-out we take to try to explain in our minds why we may be in a certain situation today that we don't like. Like, if I would have done that, I wouldn't have had this. Or if I wouldn't have, there's some big ones, like some people, I wouldn't have gotten that car drunk. That's a serious regret, especially if something tragically came of that. Even something as serious as that, you must forgive yourself and learn from it and not feel guilty, because nobody's perfect. None of us are perfect. And I can't stand the people that go around thinking that they're perfect or they're better than everybody else. Those people got more regrets than you know. They just cover it over better. Life is very simple. I keep saying that. And I've truly learned that. I see all these people with books trying to figure out who they are and what life is about or how to be successful. It's very simple. You can have all the knowledge from a book in the world, but if you don't know how to use it, and that's where people get stuck. It's common sense. It's simple. You use it. You do it. You don't need all of that to be successful. You simply need to love oneself and be positive, and to learn how to handle bad things when they do happen, or tragedy when it does happen. Everybody's going to die. Because I know I'm saying a lot about death tonight because a lot of people, things are tied to regret with death. And I know somebody who I care about a lot, dear, dear friend of mine, and their daughter had passed away, and in a tragic circumstance. And as I know of my mom, how tragic that was, and if I lost one of my children, it'd be devastating. But I know sincerely that if that person, it's their time, then it's their time. Something bigger can come out of it. And they'll always be there with you, in your heart and your soul. They don't want you to live in regret. They want you to live in happiness and move forward. Because you can't change it. You can't bring them back. You can never bring them back. So what you should do is live with their memory, their good memories. And have those good memories make better decisions for you today. As I keep saying, and I'll say it again on this show, you cannot change the past. You can be mature enough to face the past, to face the guilt and the shame and thus bad decisions, and thus all of it comes down to regret. But if you live your life every day in regret, it's like cancer consuming your mind. You need to rid yourself of regret and the shame and the guilt. And I know it sounds easy for someone else to say. No, I had to suffer to figure this out, and I still figure it out every day. Every day, life brings us new chapters. How we write them is up to us. So I tell you, please, look within and look at what you regret and look at what you possibly may feel shame about or guilt about and forgive yourself. And if it involves someone else, forgive them. Never forget it, but forgive them. But most of all, forgive yourself. Have no regrets. Only have stepping stones and lessons. Because every day you wake up is a blessing. And with every new day begins a new life. Don't get stuck in the past, no matter what you've done. And if people can't accept you for your past, and thus the things you regret, then they don't belong in your life. If people can't accept you for you, they need to go. They need to go. I don't need to come on this show and say all types of fancy psychological terms. I'm not into that. Do I know them? Sure. I'm in here telling you simple, real facts and advice. Because once you figure it all out, it's just that simple. It's very simple. But never, never be around people who cannot accept you truly for you. That's why I always say keep your circle small, because it's hard to find those people. But they're there, and I'm blessed enough to have several of them. No regrets. No regrets. Not anymore. I only move forward now, as should you. And don't let anyone or anything stand in your way, like guilt, shame, and thus regret. You only got one life. Live it well. Choose wisely. Forgive graciously. And always be yourself. Good night. God bless.